Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be back.
So today we've got quite a stack of sources in front of us, really intense, highly technical material.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about everything from SANS courseware to, the official NIST frameworks, the heavy hitters.
Exactly. And our mission today is pretty sharp. We are executing a full deep dive into the mindset, the strategy, and I guess the really gritty command line tactics you need for the GIAC certified incident handler.
The GCIH.
The GCIH.
That's right. And this isn't just theory, it's not a basic review. What we're doing is extracting the practical playbook, the actual steps for defending a network. We're drawing from resources that cover the entire life cycle of an incident.
The whole thing from start to finish.
The whole thing. From that initial team prep, which is so critical for smaller organizations, all the way down to the really low-level investigation techniques. If you're preparing to lead a response, this is your blueprint.
Okay, and when we talk about structure, we're really anchoring this whole conversation in the industry standard, right?
We have to. We're looking at those fundamental 6 phases of incident handling.
Right.
These are the models established by organizations like SANS and codified in documents like NIST SP 861.
Revision 2, yeah.
Revision 2. So just to keep us all oriented, let's just lay them out because every single tactical decision has to fit into this framework.
Okay, let's do it.
It's preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and then, crucially, lessons learned.
That last one feels like the one everyone forgets.
It almost always is. But the real key here, the thing that separates someone who just studies for the GCIH and someone who actually masters it, it's the fusion.
The fusion of what?
Of that high-level strategy with the really granular tactical execution.
Right.
You have to know when to contain an incident. That's the strategy.
Right.
But you also have to know how to find that malicious network connection and its associated binary, instantly using the command line. That's the tactic.
So it's like you need to be the architect and the mechanic at the same time?
Precisely. You need the vision and the quick hands.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Phase 1, preparation. This has to be the hardest phase to get funding for, right? To get management to pay attention to, especially before something terrible happens and forces their hand.
It always is.
Why is that groundwork so difficult, particularly for what our sources call SMBs, small to medium businesses? Fewer than 500 employees, maybe a tiny IT staff.
Well, the difficulty for SMBs, it really stems from these inherent constraints, personnel constraints mostly. In a big enterprise, security roles are siloed. You have your forensics team, your policy people, your in-house legal counsel.
Right, specialists for everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In an SMB, those roles are all combined. The server admin is also the help desk and is also suddenly the chief security officer.
One person wearing 10 different hats.
10 hats. And often at the same time, security just becomes this, this secondary function. It's just part of the job.
And that kind of structure, it just immediately undermines any kind of resilience, doesn't it?
It totally does.
If the one person who understands network security is out sick, the entire organization is just exposed. It's a massive single point of failure.
That's the exact risk. A smaller team can be faster, more agile, but it is fundamentally less resilient when you're facing a sophisticated, sustained attack.
So how do you mitigate that in the preparation phase?
You have to focus on human backups, not just data backups. You need cross-training. Now, the sources say the minimum viable incident team, the absolute minimum, only requires 2 roles.
Just 2.
Just 2, but they have to be clearly defined. First, you have the technician.
Okay.
That's the person doing the hands-on system analysis, the log correlation. They're the one who sounds the alarm.
And the second role?
The decision maker.
Yeah.
This person holds the organizational authority. They're the one who can authorize quarantining a critical system or approve major communications or, sign off on system downtime that's going to cost money.
I can see a challenge there, though. In an SMB, the decision maker is probably the CEO or the owner, right?
Often, yes.
And the technician is the lone sysadmin. So how does that dynamic actually work at, 2 in the morning during a high-pressure incident?
That's a fantastic question, and it's why you have to define the communication paths during the preparation phase. It can't be figured out on the fly.
So it's already written down. If X happens, technician calls this number.
Exactly. The technician needs an immediate, pre-agreed-upon way to reach the decision maker, even if it's 2 a.m. And the decision maker has to be ready to pick up and respond. Their main job is to take the technical findings and weigh them against the business risk. So the technician says, this database is compromised. The decision maker decides if that database gets taken offline immediately, no matter the cost of downtime.
That separation of duties, even if it's just two people, seems vital.
It is. It prevents the technician from having to make a business decision they're not qualified for, and it prevents the CEO from trying to troubleshoot a server.
So even before anyone types a single command, you're saying the organizational policies have to be in place. They have to grant this team, these two people, explicit authority.
Unquestionable authority. You need that management buy-in, and it has to be formalized, written down in policy documents,
Why is that so important?
because these policies are what you use to overcome internal objections during a crisis. You need an explicit policy that grants the team authority to monitor network traffic without asking for consent.
Right.
You need the right to search corporate systems, whether they're company-owned laptops or even employee-owned devices that are on the network.
Because if you don't have that,
If an employee challenges your right to search their workstation while you're in the middle of an active incident and that policy isn't crystal clear, your investigation just stops, dead in its tracks.
yeah, the last thing you want is a legal debate with the marketing VP while data is just hemorrhaging out of the network.
Exactly.
What about the really delicate issue of law enforcement? External legal teams?
That stance has to be predetermined. You have to decide ahead of time. When do we call law enforcement? Who is the designated person to make that call? Who makes the final decision? This all needs pre-authorization.
Especially in an SMB that doesn't have an in-house lawyer.
Absolutely. And it's also worth noting, the source material is very clear on this. There are 2 universal exceptions that you must report, no matter what your internal policy is.
Okay, what are they?
Any incident involving child pornography found on company systems, and any incident that suggests an imminent threat to human life, those supersede everything.
Right. Okay. So let's talk training. If an SMB can't just drop, $20,000 to send 3 people to a SANS course, how do they get effective, high-quality preparation and training on a shoestring budget?
You have to be really smart about internalizing knowledge. Let's say your budget allows for one person to go to an intense course, like SANS 504.
The hacker techniques and incident handling one?
That's the one. That person now becomes your internal subject matter expert. But it can't stop there. Part of their job has to be creating and leading internal training sessions for the rest of the team.
So they translate the course content into practical exercises.
Yes, you maximize the return on that one big investment.
And what about free resources? What are the high-impact things every GCIH candidate and every incident team should be using right now?
Okay, number 1, you should be leveraging open intelligence platforms. The Internet Storm Center, the ISC, is essential for threat intel feeds and their incident diaries.
They have great write-ups.
They do. And they also provide malware analysis challenges. Then you've got the Honeynet project, which releases packet captures and forensic scenarios.
So you can practice on real-world data without touching your live network.
Exactly. It's a safe sandbox.
Yeah.
And finally, you have to rely on the NIST Computer Security Division's 800 series publications. These guys are free, they're foundational, and they're constantly updated.
Okay, let's shift to the physical prep. The jump kit. The go bag for the incident handler. What are the essential tools, both free and commercial, that have to be ready to go?
The jump kit is your rapid deployment arsenal. It absolutely needs network analysis tools. So snort for intrusion detection.
You have to keep those rule sets updated, though.
Oh, constantly. And Wireshark, which used to be Ethereal, is the absolute king of deep packet inspection. You have to have it. Then you need Nmap for quick reconnaissance and port scanning. It's crucial for confirming if unexpected services are listening on a compromised machine.
And with such a limited staff, what about automation? Things that can do the work for you.
Automation is key for a small team. I mean, commercial proxies like WebSense are popular, but there are great open source solutions. Things like Squid combined with Dan's Guardian can provide really robust URL blocking, content filtering, and most importantly, centralized logging of all web traffic.
And that logging compensates for not having eyes on the screen 24/7.
It's your history. It's your record of what happened. You also mentioned virtualization earlier, specifically VMware. Why is that considered like a mandatory prep step now?
Right. It's not just an academic tool anymore.
No, it's mandatory because it allows for safe, non-disruptive analysis. Whether it's VMware, VirtualBox, Hyper-V, whatever, the ability to spin up an isolated environment is a game changer.
So you can detonate malware safely.
You can detonate malware, you can test a suspicious executable, you can reconstruct a compromised system state, all without any risk to your production network. And the instant rollback feature, The ability to revert to a clean snapshot is just indispensable for malware analysis. It saves days of work.
Okay, last thing on prep. Low tech but high impact aids for the entry-level staff or the help desk.
Right. This is where the SANS first responder cheat sheets are just invaluable. You give these to your help desk personnel. They list simple, non-destructive commands to run on Windows and Linux. Basic network checks, process lists, things that can quickly surface those initial indicators of compromise, or IOCs.
So the trained incident handler gets better information from the start.
Exactly. It ensures the initial info is standardized and actionable, not just a panicked, inconsistent verbal report.
Okay, so preparation is done. Now, the phone rings. This is where the rubber meets the road. Identification. The moment that alert fires or a user reports something weird, you need a process to confirm you actually have an incident.
And critically, you have to determine its severity. You have to justify allocating your very limited resources.
So the process starts with definitions.
It has to. You need a predefined standard for what counts as an incident versus, say, a simple system failure or a minor policy violation. And once you confirm it's an incident, that severity assessment is paramount.
Why is that so critical for an SMB?
Because for a resource-constrained team, over-allocating your people to a low-severity event can be just as damaging as under-allocating them to a critical breach. You pull everyone off their normal duties for a minor issue, and the whole business suffers.
Okay, so walk us through that spectrum, the incident criticality levels. How do you map the impact to the response?
We usually look at a 5-level scale. At the very top, the extreme end, you have critical severity 1.
Okay, what does that look like?
This means a mission-critical system is affected. We're talking a domain controller, your primary e-commerce server, the source code repository.
The crown jewel.
The crown jewels. It's leading to high potential loss, major business interruption. The classic examples are crippling ransomware that encrypts all your core assets, or a sustained DDoS attack that takes your services completely offline.
And right below that, high severity, or severity 2. This feels like where most of the really serious day-to-day attacks would fall.
That's right. High severity 2 often affects non-critical systems, but it still results in a considerable loss, either financial or reputational.
Like what?
Think credential theft of a local administrator account. That allows an attacker to start moving laterally across the network. Or persistent unauthorized access to a database that has sensitive client data. The business function is degraded, but maybe not completely halted.
And as we move down that scale,
Medium severity 3 involves a minor loss or impact. This might be the theft of an encrypted company laptop. The risk is there, but it's mitigated by strong encryption. Or maybe a web server defacement that looks bad, but doesn't actually result in data loss.
okay, then low.
Low severity 4 involves non-sensitive info, minimal financial risk. So you find a known vulnerability on an internal, completely air-gapped test server. It needs to be fixed. It's not an emergency.
And the bottom of the barrel.
Is informational. Severity 5. This is just raising awareness. Persistent port scanning from the outside that doesn't lead to a compromise. It's worth documenting, maybe blocking the IP, but it's not an active incident.
Now, the nuance here, which seems vital for anyone studying for the GCIH, is that the definition of high loss is totally different for every company.
Oh, completely. The framework has to be customized. You have to define what loss means in your specific operational and regulatory context. A data breach at a hospital is very different from one at a retail shop.
Okay, so severity is set.
Yeah.
We launch the investigation. You've said the fastest path to understanding what happened is log analysis. But there are so many logs. What's the GCIH triage strategy to find the attacker's activity quickly?
You have to prioritize based on what you suspect is happening. If that initial alert suggests data exfiltration,
Key data leaving the network.
right, then you immediately prioritize your outbound traffic logs, your firewall logs, your proxy logs. You're looking for unusual volumes of data being transferred, especially over weird ports or protocols.
And what if you're trying to verify that you're communicating with a known bad IP address?
For that, you go straight to your server firewall logs. They will quickly show you any connections to blacklisted IPs or communication patterns that violate your egress filtering rules.
Okay, now the really hard one. Command and control, C2. Especially when the malware is trying to hide its traffic in, say, encrypted HTTPS.
This is where you analyze your DNS logs. It's the key. Malware often uses domain generation algorithms, DGAs, or hard-coded domains to phone home.
And why DNS logs specifically?
Because even if the C2 traffic itself is encrypted, the initial DNS query from the infected machine to resolve that malicious domain name, that's usually logged in plain text. It's often a much faster and more efficient way to spot C2 than trying to do deep packet inspection on tons of encrypted data streams.
So if the attacker is already inside and they're moving around, what's the priority for tracking that lateral movement?
If you suspect lateral movement, you drop everything and prioritize the Active Directory event logs,
Why there?
because those logs track all the authentication requests, failed Kerberos tickets, successful access attempts to file shares, RDP logins. If an account from a workstation in marketing suddenly logs into a database server in the finance department at 3 a.m., that's your huge red flag right there.
And for just basic unauthorized access attempts.
Always start with the general authentication logs. They'll show you the successes and the failures. Now, before we move on from logs, we have to talk about something called the clock skew trap.
Okay.
This is a technical detail that can absolutely derail an entire investigation.
Because time is everything in forensics. You need that accurate timeline to build the narrative of the attack.
It's the entire backbone of the narrative. When you're collecting logs from a firewall, a proxy, a server, and a workstation, you are assuming all their clocks are synchronized, but they're usually not.
They drift.
They drift. Or, and this is a classic one, they don't all account for daylight savings time changes correctly, so some systems are off by exactly 1 hour.
And if you don't notice that,
Your whole timeline is useless.
Mm.
A supposed 5-minute window between a firewall drop and a process launch might actually be an hour and 5 minutes, or it might have happened in the reverse order.
so how does a responder practically deal with that in the middle of an incident?
You have to manually calculate the differential offset. You establish one known good time source, like your domain controller, and then you figure out how many seconds or minutes each compromised host is ahead or behind that source.
And then you manually adjust all the timestamps in your timeline.
You normalize them all. It's painstaking work, but it's absolutely essential for proving cause and effect. So, let's transition now from that strategic view of logs to the really tactical reality. To handle an incident, and definitely to pass the GCIH, you have to be comfortable on the command line. It's not optional.
Right, and this is the stuff you do before containment, before you start changing things and destroying volatile data.
Precisely. Let's start with Windows triage, the essential commands.
Okay.
You start with the basics of identification. Hostname, wool, homie, confirms the machine and the user context you're in. Then system info. This gives you a crucial snapshot of the OS version, the patch level,
Which can immediately tell you if a known vulnerability is present.
instantly. Then for accounts, the standards are net user and net local group. But here's the power tip.
Okay.
For a deeper account investigation, use WMIC user account list.
Why that one specifically?
Yeah, because the output includes the security identifier, the SID. An attacker might create a benign-looking account, like backup admin, but its SID is a unique identifier. Cross-referencing SIDs across different logs and systems is a core forensic task.
Okay, so where are attackers usually hiding? In processes and services. How do we quickly get the detail we need to tell a good program from a bad one?
The standard task list is just the start. You have to add the parameters. Task list V gives you the verbose output. It includes the session ID, the CPU time, and critically, the user context the process is running as.
So if a web server process is running as a domain admin,
That's an instant massive red flag. Then task list SVC links your process IDs back to their associated Windows services. And for more targeted hunting or scripting, the WMIC utility, WMIC process get name process it is fantastic.
all right, now network activity, this is huge. We need to tie those open ports back to the actual files on the disk.
And for that, the one indispensable command is netstat-naob. And I really want to stress those flags, -naob.
Let's break that down.
Sure, -n skips DNS resolution, which makes the output much faster. A shows all connections, listening, and established. A shows the owning process ID, the PID. But the critical flag, the one that gives you true forensic insight, is AB,
And a piece shows you.
the associated executable,
Hmm.
the binary, the actual program that is making that connection.
Okay, give us a scenario. Why is that NASH-B flag such a game changer?
Okay, imagine you see port 4444 open and listening on your system. Without -B, all you have is a PID, a number. You'd have to go look that up. With -B, the output immediately shows you that the listening process is, say, python.exe.
Hmm.
Now, Python is a legitimate program, but why is it listening on a high random port that instantly suggests a covert channel or maybe a reverse shell written in Python? The -B flag connects that suspicious network activity directly with the file path on disk, which makes evidence collection possible.
So you know exactly what file to go grab.
Exactly.
Okay, attackers always want to survive a reboot. They want persistence. How do we hunt down their scheduled return trips?
Persistent hunting is crucial. On Windows, you immediately check scheduled tasks with tasks. Attackers love to hide here, setting malware to run every day or every hour.
And the other big one is startup programs.
Right. And you can hunt through the registry manually, but a much faster way is to use Omic's startup list full. This command rapidly shows you everything configured to run at boot, and critically, it reveals the precise registry path where that persistence is stored. You're hunting for those run annoyance keys.
Okay, let's switch gears. Linux triage. This often feels like you're interacting with the system at an even lower level.
You are. So for bare metal checks on system state, you start with uptime. If a server's been running for 500 days, you know you're dealing with a long history. Uname is usually the kernel release and version, which is essential for checking against known kernel exploits.
And the file system.
DFA gives you a human-readable summary of disk usage. And fdisk-desk-l shows you the partition table. A quick check for any unusual mounted partitions could show you where an attacker has hidden their data.
How about tracking users and their activity on the Linux?
WO, or WHO, shows you who's currently logged on and, importantly, the IP address they came from. If you see a suspicious remote IP, that's your first major lead. To get a full list of all users on the system, you can look at the etc shadow file. A quick command like cat etc shadow cut -d-f1 will just pull out the usernames for you.
And processes.
For active processes, PSO gives you a detailed static snapshot. It includes the CPU usage, memory, and who's running it. For a real-time view of what's eating up resources, you use top.
And what's the Linux equivalent of hunting for persistence and scheduled tasks?
That's cron jobs. Attackers use cron tabs all the time to make sure their malware or backdoors get re-executed after a reboot. You use crontab-l to list the scheduled commands for the user you're logged in as. And don't forget to check the system-wide files in a cron tab and the cron.d directories.
Now, you flagged a really specific network configuration check in Linux that you said is a high-confidence indicator of a sniffer.
Yes. You check your network interfaces using ifconfig-a or the newer ip-a. You look at the output for an interface like if0. If you see a flag in there indicating it is running in promiscuous mode.
What does that mean exactly?
It means the network card is capturing all traffic on the local network segment, not just the traffic addressed to it. It's a nearly guaranteed indicator that a network sniffer program like netcat or maybe TCP dump is active on that system.
And that's a huge find.
It's massive because it confirms the attacker isn't just on that one host. They're actively spying on all the surrounding computers.
Okay, final tactical step before we get to containment. Network forensics. Let's talk Wireshark and SYN floods.
Right. Wireshark is your microscope for network traffic. It is absolutely essential when you suspect a covert channel.
Like hiding traffic on a common port.
Exactly. Let's say you see a ton of traffic on port 443, which is for HTTPS. But when you look at the actual payload data in Wireshark, it's not encrypted TLS SSL traffic. It's just plain text or some other weirdly structured data. That's how you confirm a tool like netcat is just masquerading on that port to get past the firewall.
Then what about identifying a SYN flood? What are we visually looking for in Wireshark for that?
A SYN flood is a classic denial of service attack. In Wireshark, you'll see a massive asymmetry in the traffic. You'll see a huge volume of packets with the SYN flag set, all directed at your target.
So tons of connection requests coming in.
Tons of requests. But you'll see virtually no corresponding SYN ACK packets coming back from your target, and crucially, no final ACK packets from the attacker. This visual pattern confirms the attacker is just overwhelming the service queue of half-open connections.
Okay. We have established severity. We've triaged the logs. We've confirmed the malicious binaries. Now, we have to hit the containment button. This requires immediate action, but it also has these really delicate forensic consequences. Which brings us to the famous reboot dilemma.
This is the exact moment where the business priority, which is stop the bleeding, clashes with forensic rigor. The priority is to stop the attack and limit the damage. Containment might mean blocking an IT, isolating a network segment, or just physically unplugging a machine. But you have to consider the reboot dilemma.
Which is?
Rebooting a machine destroys your most valuable and volatile evidence. Everything in physical memory, the RAM is gone. Active network connections, the process tables, the user's command history, all wiped out.
So if there's any chance of litigation, or if it's a highly sensitive data breach, what forensic steps have to happen before you pull the plug or reboot?
Before any disruptive action, if at all possible, the handler has to perform volatile data acquisition. This means capturing a memory dump using tools like Dumpit or Volatility. You also collect crucial files like the master file table and the registry hives, and you record cryptographic hash values of key system files to prove their integrity later.
And what about the hard drive itself?
If a full disk image is required, the drives must be connected to an acquisition station using a hardware write blocker.
Okay, explain that. Why is that piece of physical hardware so critical for the chain of custody?
A write blocker is a device that physically prevents any data from being written back to the evidence drive. It's the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
When a forensic machine even just looks at a hard drive, normal system actions like indexing or mounting the file system can alter metadata on that drive. A write blocker physically prevents this. It ensures the evidence remains pristine and lets you guarantee to a court that nothing was altered between collection and analysis.
Let's go back to that NSJ web server case study from the source material to illustrate this. Once they confirmed that Linux web server was compromised, what was their methodical containment approach?
Their first steps were very deliberate and non-destructive. First, they did a full tape backup of the compromised system, creating a snapshot. Then they ran network monitoring with Ethereal to capture the attacker's live traffic.
So they gathered intelligence first.
Exactly. It was only after management approved the business disruption that they executed the final definitive containment step, physically disconnecting the compromised server from the network. They unplugged the cable, the bleeding stopped.
So once the evidence is collected with a write blocker and all that, the administrative burden kicks in. This brings us back to the chain of custody.
Right. And the chain of custody is so much more than just a piece of paper. It is the unbreakable sequential documentation that tracks the integrity, the possession, the control, the transfer, and the analysis of that evidence.
And why does this documentation have to be so incredibly rigorous?
The rigor is required to assure the court, the jury, or the judge that the evidence you're presenting is authentic, that it's exactly what was collected, that it hasn't been tampered with, and that it was always under the control of an authorized person.
Because if there's a gap.
If there's a gap in that timeline, or if some unauthorized person had access to the drive for an afternoon, the evidence can be deemed inadmissible. It can nullify months of investigation and let the attacker walk free.
What are the specific documentation requirements for that chain? What has to be on the form?
Every single transfer has to be documented. The form needs a unique evidence ID number, the name and signature of the person who collected it, the date, the time, and then, critically, the signatures and dates of every subsequent custodian who handles that evidence.
And the physical evidence itself.
The hard drive, the thumb drive, it has to be packaged, sealed, and signed across the seal in a tamper-evident bag. This provides a visual confirmation that the package hasn't been opened without authorization. The administrative effort to maintain this is often the hardest part of a big incident response.
Okay, so we've contained the threat, we've secured the evidence, now we move to eradication, removing the attacker's presence completely. What is the gold standard here, especially after something deep like a rootkit?
For a complex incident, the gold standard is often disruptive, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
You reinstall the operating system from original known good media.
You pave the machine.
You pave it. Then you apply all the patches and reconfigure security before you restore any data.
Why not just restore from a clean backup of the whole system?
Because a sophisticated attacker might have corrupted the backup image itself, or the malware could persist in system areas that a simple data restore won't touch. If a rootkit was involved, only a full OS reinstall gives you any real guarantee that you've removed that kernel-level compromise.
Let's trace the eradication steps from that NSJ case study. How did they ensure the attacker's foothold was totally gone from that Linux system?
They executed a really methodical plan based on the evidence they found. First, they changed all the system and domain passwords. Critical. Second, they deleted the unknown user accounts they found in the etc password file.
Right.
Third, they removed the specific vulnerability, that old PFF CGI script that the attacker used to get in. They inspected all the initialization files, and they used contab-L to make sure no scheduled commands were left behind. And finally, they deleted the sniffer program, Sniffit, that they had found running in promiscuous mode. Every step was a targeted removal based on forensic findings.
All right, after all that messy, high-pressure work of eradication, we get to recovery. Getting the system back online, ready for business as usual. How do we confirm it's truly clean and production-ready?
The recovery phase is all about a methodical return to service. It has two major components. First, you're installing the necessary patches and upgrades. In the NSJ case, this meant installing the latest Linux OS security patches. Second, and this is so important, is end-user validation testing. The system isn't really recovered until the people who use it every day confirm that its functionality is restored and is performing as expected.
And once it's back in production.
Once it's back, the recovery phase mandates a sustained period of much closer monitoring. You need special procedures in place to watch those specific systems that were hit, looking for any sign of recurring attacker activity. You're basically on high alert for a while.
The final phase, lessons learned. This is the one that's so often neglected. Everyone's exhausted, the crisis is over, they just want to move on. Why is this post-incident review so vital?
It's the continuous improvement loop. It is what determines whether you solve this problem once or whether you're going to be dealing with the exact same incident again next year.
And timing is key, I assume.
It's critical. The sources emphasize this meeting has to happen quickly, within a few days or a week of the recovery, while all the details are still fresh in everyone's minds.
And what's the core mandate? What's the one rule for that meeting?
The core mandate is rigorous self-examination, but with one absolute explicit rule: no assigning of blame. If the meeting turns into a witch hunt to find out whose fault it was, people will immediately clam up, they'll withhold information, and the entire process fails. The focus has to be on objective process improvement, systemic failures, resource gaps, policy deficiencies, not who clicked the wrong link.
So what are the essential questions that should guide that retrospective?
You should break down the response phase by phase. For preparation, did we have the right policies, the right tools? Were our decision makers actually available? For identification, did our monitoring actually alert us in time? Did our log triage strategy work? Or did we waste hours chasing ghosts? For containment and eradication, did we preserve the evidence correctly? Was our chain of custody solid? Did our backups actually work when we needed them?
And then an overall look.
An overall look. Did our procedures actually work as intended, or were there communication gaps? And the big one, do we need more resources, more staff, more training, new software?
That seems like a really powerful way to turn a failure into a future defense. Can you give a concrete example of how a review like that led to a real, tangible policy change?
Yeah, the source material references the fallout from a major incident involving the blaster worm years ago.
Oh, I remember that one.
Right. The Lessons Learned review found that infected computers were constantly being reintroduced to the network by well-meaning employees after they'd taken them home to fix them. So the tangible result was a new mandatory policy. Before any computer could be reconnected to the corporate network, IT staff had to physically inspect it, confirm the malware was gone, and verify that current patched antivirus was running. It eliminated that root procedural failure. So when you boil it all down, to succeed in incident handling, and to get that GCIH cert, you have to show mastery over both sides of the coin. The macro plan, those 6 strategic phases, and the microanalysis, the tactical command line tools.
Yeah, the GCIH really seems to validate your ability to manage that whole incident flow while you are simultaneously executing that really careful, non-destructive forensic analysis.
That's it.
So what does this all mean for you, for the listener who's pursuing the GCIH? Your command line fluency has to be effortless, Windows and Linux. You have to understand the specific forensic value of flags like naob and netstat, or instantly know what it means when you see an interface in promiscuous mode from ifconfig on Linux. And this whole structured flow of evidence preservation, especially that administrative rigor of the chain of custody. It's not just an academic thing. It's the absolute foundation of any legally defensible response.
And you have to remember those subtle, often overlooked concepts we talked about. You need to know why calculating differential offsets for clock skew is important. You need to know the critical difference between restoring from a backup versus doing a full clean OS install after a system's integrity has been violated.
And to really solidify this huge body of knowledge, from the log triage strategies to the critical command parameters, and to effectively find your own knowledge gaps before test day, practice that mirrors the actual exam is just essential.
You can't just read about it.
No. We highly recommend using resources that offer targeted practice questions and scenario-based simulations, like those available on Flash Genius, for your certification prep. These tools help you move from just passively knowing stuff to actively making decisions under pressure.
Test readiness is all about simulating the pressure of a real incident. Use those resources to test your speed and your accuracy at the command line.
So for our final provocative thought for you to chew on, we spent a lot of time detailing how to manage an active crisis, but let's go all the way back to the beginning. The core advice was that the smallest companies suffer most from limited preparation. So focusing on minimal budget, What is the one critical, proactive step that you are going to implement in your own environment today to make sure that next time your phase one is rock solid?
Hmm.
Are you going to finally document and test your out-of-band communication plan, update your entire escalation contact list, or maybe finally invest in that hardware write blocker you've been putting off? Because proactive readiness is always the best defense.
Think about that readiness. And thanks for diving deep with us.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.